Senator Buono, you're running for governor. What governors, either in New Jersey or elsewhere, do you particularly admire, and why?
Well, I certainly admire Governor Cuomo. I mean, he has shown such leadership. His State of the State the other day was just amazing. I mean, New York has very strong gun laws, as does New Jersey, and yet Governor Cuomo realizes that we need to do more. In the face of unspeakable tragedy, our governor has stayed mute on the gun control issue. You know, he's no stranger to using the bully pulpit to advance policies he believes in. I think it's time that our governor stood up to the far-right National Republican Party and advanced gun policies that were going to protect our families.
Okay. Even though you have some county endorsements, it seems like the Democratic Party establishment is searching for anyone but Buono as their standard bearer. How do you plan to get the party to rally around your candidacy?
Well, this is nothing new for Democratic policies or Republican policies in New Jersey. You know, the period following, leading up to a statewide election is fraught with high drama. And I don't expect this to be anything different than what I've seen in the past. I've been involved in other gubernatorial campaigns up close, and this pales in comparison. I've been very pleased at the not just the political support, but the support from the grassroots community. You know, at its core, this is going to be a very heavily grassroots campaign. We've started doing that. We've been, you know, as I said, talking to folks all over New Jersey, and I'm very excited about the coming months as the campaign intensifies.
If people want to volunteer for the campaign, how can they do that?
Well, they can go on buonoforgovernor.com, and they'll be led to a prompt where they can click and volunteer, and we welcome that.
Okay. Once you get the nomination, how do you overcome Chris Christie's tremendous money advantage and rock star image in the mainstream media?
Well, you know, for me, the reason I decided to run was because this is just too important an election. There's got to be somebody that fights for the middle class and the working poor New Jerseyans. Under my leadership, they can be sure that there'll be somebody there that stands up for their interests and not for the interests of millionaires. You know, this governor has spent the last 3 years giving his time and travel to the National Republican Party to advance anti-choice, anti-marriage equality, pro-millionaire tax policies all over the nation and right here in New Jersey. And it's time to put you know, real policies that protect middle class and working New Jerseyans. And you know, I'll always take equality and opportunity over bluster, empty bluster and tough talk, and that's what we've seen for the last 3 years. You know, the governor likes to say that Sandy has erased the blackboard, but it hasn't erased our memories of his failed economic policies for the last 3 years.
But how do you get that message of equality and fairness out when the media seems to have this love affair with the governor?
Well, you know, if the election isn't going to be held in January. The election is going to be held in November. And as you know, 11 months is light years in politics, and I expect that that will be more than adequate time to get my message out there. And there's no easy way, there's no simple way, and it takes hard work, it takes getting out there and connecting with voters, and I've done that. I've continued to do that. You know, I think that you know, I've been a lifelong progressive, reform-oriented Democrat, and I think that we do best when we offer a clear choice, a clear contrast to this governor's failed economic policies and out-of-step social stances.
Probably the most difficult task facing any governor these days is balancing the state budget with balancing the needs of the state residents. What would you do differently if you were governor than the present governor is doing?
Well, yeah, first of all, I'd be honest about our revenues, and I wouldn't, you know, what this governor did last year, early last year, was just unconscionable. It was fiscally irresponsible. It's gotten us on the path to, you know, fiscal ruin, and if so, that it's of his own doing. You know, I was chair of the budget committee during the global meltdown, and so I know a little bit about balancing a budget. And you know, this governor, he irresponsibly goosed up our revenue projections to try and force the legislature to pass an income tax cut at a time when, you know, our credit ratings were downgraded. They continue to be at risk. And I think it's important to be intellectually honest with the people of New Jersey, and I have the skill set as budget chair to do that. I also have, you know, my background, my upbringing. I think that's what makes me feel so passionate about running, because I grew up in you know, my father was an Italian immigrant. He was a butcher. He had dropped out of high school. He passed away when I was 19. And I was able to stay at Montclair State because college was affordable back then. And, you know, I had loans out, I worked, and then I was able to go to Rutgers Law School because it was affordable. I had a National Defense Student Loan, and I took a loan out of what was the Howard Savings Bank at the time. Didn't even have the $500 to deposit to qualify for the loan. I had to borrow it from a friend and promise them I'd pay it back when I got the loan, which I did. But, you know, the opportunities I had when I was growing up, I just don't think they're there now. Higher education is, the costs of college in New Jersey are among the highest in the nation. You know, I talk to kids who are saying, I'm not going to go to school, I'm not going to advance my education and get the skills I need to compete for the jobs that are actually in demand now, the high-paying, high-skilled jobs, because if I get the loans to go to school, there's no jobs to pay them off when I graduate. And so then I'm faced with, you know, having my credit rating destroyed for the rest of my life and being unable to buy a house or advance myself and my needs of my family.
But with the revenue shortfall and things like the pension obligations, how do we really get the funds that we need to make higher education affordable and develop the infrastructure that the governor seems to be ignoring?
Well, you know, a budget is about making choices. You know, it's a lot more than dollars and cents. And a budget is about, one thing I learned being on the budget committee for many years while I was in the Assembly and then in the Senate and then as budget chair, is that it's about making choices. When I was the budget chair in 2008 and 2009, and you know, people tend to forget how bad it was. And I remember the revenues were literally in free fall. I remember talking to folks at the Office of Legislative Services and people being very rattled, not knowing where the bottom would end up. And we were able to, I'm proud to have been part of that framework that balanced that budget. We had to cut $4.5 billion over 2 years, and we were able to prioritize and, you know, preserve funding for the programs and services, education, healthcare, that we felt were important.
You mentioned before the governor's reluctance to talk about gun control. Gun control is only part of the problem of crime. We've seen crime going up in the inner cities as we're laying off law enforcement people. How would you approach that as governor?
Well, you know, gun control, as you had said, it is part of the problem, but I think with respect to the scourge of gun violence across New Jersey, part of the problem is, you know, it has to be a multifaceted approach. It has to be not just gun laws that are on the books and strengthening those, but it also has to be the issue of mental health. New Jersey, you know, there's the FBI database requires or can't require states, but actually there was a court case which said that you cannot require states to provide background information on people's mental health, whether or not they've been involuntarily committed to an institution, to the federal government. So New Jersey is encouraged, the states are encouraged to provide this background information to the FBI to do adequate, you know, background checks so that people who are deemed too dangerous to have guns are prevented from doing so. Well, New Jersey is at the very low end of the spectrum in providing that mental health information to the FBI database so that we can actually adequately do background checks. The state of New York has a great track record in doing so, and so what I'm working on now is legislation to require New Jersey to provide that database to the FBI so that we can prevent people from having guns that are deemed too dangerous.
Okay, but that's
a beginning.
Aside from guns, the rampant poverty in cities like Camden and Newark are breeding grounds for crime. How do we alleviate that?
Well, we have to have a plan to create jobs. You know, it's much easier to be in denial about, you know, our problems and have escapist rhetoric instead of really coming up with a job plan to do something about our highest in the 3 decades unemployment, with New Jersey being at the bottom of the barrel in terms of economic growth. And unfortunately for New Jersey, it's not a national problem. It's not a regional problem. If you look at the region, New Jersey has lagged behind the rest of the nation in climbing out of this economic plan. And the governor's plan to kickstart our economy is to propose a trickle down, long discredited trickle down income tax cut that disproportionately benefits the wealthy, and he's still proposing it. And I was amazed that, I think that's one of the main differences between the governor and myself, is that he supports income tax cuts for the wealthy, and I support property tax cuts for everyone else.
If either one or both houses of the legislature turns to GOP control and you become governor, how would you handle divided government any differently or the same as Governor Christie?
Well, I would, under this administration's leadership, we've had unemployment that is at an all-time high. Under this administration's leadership, we have women that are having it harder to find health care. And I can tell you that under my leadership, the middle class and the working poor would have someone standing up for them. I think that prior to Governor Christie becoming governor of the state of New Jersey, in the Senate, we had a broad bipartisan coalition to address issues. When Governor Christie was still U.S. Attorney and I was chair of the Budget Committee, we had a coalition of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate that advanced many policies that were successful. When I was budget chair, I read the reports on pensions, and I saw that if we did nothing, that the pension system would collapse under the weight of its own debt. So I spearheaded along with other Democrats and some Republicans, a plan, several legislative initiatives to address that problem. Common sense reforms for public employee pensions. We were ready to propose them and to put it before the legislature, but at the time, Governor Corzine refused to sign some of the more, the stronger measures. So what I did as budget chair, I became creative, and in order to advance the policies that I thought were vital to protect public employee pensions, I held up the budget vote in my committee. The fiscal year budget has to go through the Budget Committee, and I refused to post it until we posted some of those pension and benefit bills. We were able to get some of the more modest reforms through, and it was a bipartisan coalition, the ones that Governor Corzine would sign.
Final question. What's your 30-second elevator speech to the citizens of New Jersey as to why they should support you?
Well, I want, at its core, I am passionate about running because I want to create the same opportunities I had growing up. At its core, it's about keeping families together, about creating good-paying jobs, stemming the hemorrhaging of good-paying jobs to other states, providing opportunity for all New Jerseyans, and not at the expense of, not ignoring the middle class and working poor in New Jersey. And I'll be an advocate. I've always been an advocate for the little guy because I've lived that struggle.
Senator Barbara Buono, thank you very much.